16 players entered this Legends of Runeterra Invitational, but we can only crown one champion. We're about 5 games away from doing so. My name is Boulevard, and on the top here we have Xixo from Group A, coming in with his Demacia Ionia deck. And on the bottom we have Surrender from Group B, starting us off with Noxus Spiders. Both of these players fresh off of grueling Game 5 finishes in their top 4 matches. Going to see who will be crowned champion here. So we get game number 1 started off with a rather aggressive mirror. Going to be double Mark of the Isle out of Surrender to get us started here. No turn 1 play from Xixo. Does mean an uncontested Precious Pet going to come down. 2 Lucian and a Senna for Xixo though. Pretty good start to the tournament. Also, Laurent Protégé. This Arachnid Horror could come down for Surrender, going to do that instead of the Precious Pet. Now, Lucian going to come down from Xixo. Could use the Radiant Strike if he wants to block this Precious Pet. If not, could just be going to 15 here on turn 2. A lot of damage to push through. Looks like it will be the Radiant Strike onto the block of the Precious Pet. No mana for the Mark of the Isles. Relatively safe block there. 1 life left on this Lucian. Of course, the second Lucian turning into a Relentless Pursuit and a Legion Saboteur, or a Legion Rearguard rather, going to pair rather nicely with this House Spider into the crowd favorite turn. War Chef going to be able to push down a bit of damage, and Senna going to come down over the Laurent Protégé. Xixo saying, I can race too. Deciding not to try and swing out at this Arachnid Horror, instead going to push through 7 first strike damage. Surrender, considering what he can throw down in the face of such a massive life swing, gonna get the House Spider down. Certainly going to be followed by the Legion Rearguard to get this crowd favorite as big as possible. Of course, the Senna Lucian duo, not something you want to see this early on, as if one of them dies, the other gets powered up. Going to decide if he wants to block something here with the Spiderling, or if he wants to just take this damage. Could block the Spiderling onto the Lucian and go for the Mark of the Isle. However, that will push through 10 damage as Senna going to see Lucian die before her eyes, turn into a 5-3 double strike. That's a very big start for Xixo here. Going to be going down to 10 already is Surrender. Can't be too pleased about that one. That is a massive life swing. And the decisive maneuver picked up for Surrender. No Hecarim to pair that with just yet. However, does have the crowd favorite. As long as you can get an overwhelm unit with that, you're going to feel good about it. But the single combat pickup for Xixo. Of course, this Senna upgrade going to get slammed down with another Lucian. So if this Senna does get dealt with, Lucian will then upgrade. Will have single combat to turn on the Lucian ability potentially. Going to be 2 attacks here. It's just going to be the 1. Nope, going to throw in the House Spider as well. Saying, you can take the value trade if you want. I have another Mark of the Isle. Ready and waiting. Xixo considering if he can just take another 5 damage. Or if he has to line up a block here. Definitely would have preferred to get the Lucian down first. So if the Senna died, at least he got the compensation level up. Instead, just going to be 5 damage coming through. An extremely aggressive start out of both players. 12 to 10 already here on turn 4. Is going to be the Lucian coming down. Couple of options for Surrender. This crowd favorite would only be a 4-4, but that's going to be enough to contest the board. And the War Chef coming down is going to make it so that this Lucian can just beat up this crowd favorite. Of course, the decisive maneuver still has that stun ability. Now, 5 mana for Xixo. Going to start off with the Fleet Feather Tracker. Does mean no Garen going to be coming down this turn. Protégé could come down and turn off the single combat in terms of mana. Surrender first going to be able to make a play. Legion Rearguard almost certainly not going to do anything. Could just save the mana for this decisive maneuver. Of course, would rather play that on your own turn to try and push through lethal. As an overwhelmed unit getting through with no blocker. This is going to be the pass. Decisive maneuver likely to be the play here then. It's going to be the Protégé turning on this Fleet Feather Tracker's Challenger ability. Just 2 cards left on the side of Xixo, but the board and life in his favor currently. And a big swing going to come out of this Senna. Could end the game here. Couple of blockers going to be pulled all the way to the right by this Protege and Fleet Feather. War Chef could go on to the Lucian then. Hoping to take out this crowd favorite. Crowd favorite actually going to have to block the Senna if not for the decisive maneuver. Going to have to see how this one plays out exactly. So there are a couple of options for the attacks from Xixo as well as the subsequent blocks from Surrender. But either way, this one is close to over for one of these players. Turn 5, a very early finish. Usually see it on turn 6 with the hyper aggro decks. And is going to be these attacks lined up onto the spiders, leaving the crowd favorite to block the Senna, or perhaps the War Chef. Is just going to attack with the Senna. I'm going to put it this way so that if the Senna does die here, Lucian will get the upgrade and end the game, as he'll turn into a 5-4 with double strike. Going to be the crowd favorite blocked onto this War Chef. Going to be the stun then onto the Senna. Not going to be able to take her out. Xixo 1 mana shy of winning this game, as a Senna single combat into something would turn this Lucian on and end it for him. However, not the way the mana is going to line up right now. As the Senna stunned out. The board traded for Surrender thanks to this attack buff from the decisive maneuver onto the House Spider, taking out the Protege. However, Lucian Senna, a powerful duo left on the side of Xixo. 12-6 is the life totals. Legion Rearguard going to come out here. No Hecarim this time around for Surrender. That's going to be the Garen down for Xixo. 2 single combats left remaining. One will be playable this turn. The other will have to wait. It will be a full play out of the hand here from Surrender. Does still have this Mark of the Isle. Pushing through a fair amount of damage would put Xixo at -1, which means some greedy blocks here could actually end the game. Garen almost certainly going to come down onto this crowd favorite though, which would only push through 9 damage. With the Mark of the Isle would be lethal. So if it's just the block from Garen, this actually will end the game. Of course, Senna going to be a relatively free block in the eyes of Xixo. Going to put him at 6 instead. Not enough for Mark of the Isle to push through the lethal. Single combats on backup. Can take out an ephemeral unit if the Mark of the Isle comes out. Surrender, though, looking like this game not going to go his way, as this Legion Rearguard does not have blocking capabilities. There is more room to clear out some blockers here on the side of Xixo, thanks to this double single combat. Looks like game number 1 could be going the way of Xixo here very shortly. Just have to see how it plays out. There have been some rather large swings so far in this tournament. It's a lot of desperate comebacks. Could still see one here from Surrender. Personally, not seeing how that would play out. However, I have been wrong before in terms of comeback potential. Looks like it will be the Mark of the Isle onto this Spider to trade onto the Lucian. Single combat from Senna onto that would save the Lucian as well as upgrade him. Surrender going for the winning play as opposed to the not losing one. Going for this Mark of the Isle onto the House Spider. Or not the House Spider, rather the Spiderling. Going to try and get over this Lucian. Double single combat. One of them going to come down here. Going to be the Lucian onto the Legion Rearguard, actually. Or rather, the Arachnid Horror. Instead, going to only eat 3 damage, go down to 9. Going to protect this double-striked Senna, saying, I don't need this Lucian. And now with no blockers on the side of Surrender, rather, this will be game number 1, going the way of Xixo. Save a Vile Feast. That is going to be it. Top deck here does not matter. Can just go straight to combat, but it's the Laurent Protege. The House Spider actually going to come down now. Going to make this not lethal as Xixo... Actually, it's still going to be lethal, rather, as the single combat going to come out, taking care of this House Spider. Laurent Protege going to pull the Spider off to the side. And this massive Senna from the early game going to push through the victory here in game number 1 for Xixo.
일정이 또 이걸로 굉장히 스무스하게 지나갔고 역시 그렇죠. 자, 양 선수들의 두 번째 세트 시작이 됩니다.
Game number 2 in this final match here going to be led by Xixo, picking up a win with his Demacia Ionia deck, making the switch over to Noxus Spiders. Meanwhile, Surrender switching off of the Noxus Spiders into this Elnuk Ezreal deck. Going to be a pretty aggressive start on the side of Xixo with this Legion rearguard. Meanwhile, on the side of Surrender, a rather slow opening hand. Get Excited, a good removal spell, however, not something you want to see early. And there's a second one coming out, as the discards can hurt. Wish he could get this Chump Wump down, get the mushrooms before these Get Exciteds had to be used, but not going to be the case here. Is this Elise threatening to push through 6 damage, at least on the next turn, with this rear guard. Surrender contemplating whether or not this warrants a Get Excited. And Get Excited he shall, getting rid of the Bull Elnuk. Says, if you're not in the deck, I don't want you in my hand. Looking for the troop to come down on 5 and swing the tempo back in his favor. Until then, the early board certainly going to stay in the favor of Xixo. A Harsh Winds pickup, not great here for Surrender. Of course, just one turn off of the Chump Wump. Precious Pet now going to come down on the side of Xixo. No Archer coming out from Surrender. However, with the Elise, the Icevale Archer almost certainly going to have to come down. Otherwise, that will be 8 damage getting pushed through, putting Surrender down to 9. A Mystic Shot still to be played, but an awkward amount of mana thanks to the Get Excited does mean he cannot play both Icevale Archer and this Mystic Shot. Get Excited could be a consideration down onto the Elise. However, you do not want to be losing card advantage like this to the aggro decks, as something like the Elnuk Ezreal, as the Harsh Wind still going to be a -1 at some point in this game. It will be the Icevale Archer. Not getting that Get Excited down until these mushrooms are in hand. Going to dissuade the Elise attack, as it would be free traded by the Archer. Instead, only 2 damage going to be pushed through by the Precious Pet. 5 damage on turn 3 is something we're used to seeing out of things like Fleet Feather, War Chef, as well as these Precious Pet rearguard combinations. 15, relatively standard life total to be at on turn 3 in the face of these aggressive decks. Going to be the pass now over to Surrender. Going to get this Chump Wump down and going to get to attack with it if he so chooses. Brittle Steel the pickup. Much better when you have a board. Going to feel a lot safer now that these shrooms are in his hand, thanks to the Get Excited. Ooh, and a crowd favorite on the side of Xixo. Could get played out here as a 4/4, instead going to go for this House Spider. Almost certainly to be followed up by the Arena Battlecaster, getting a full board as well as the crowd favorite down. Almost certainly just going to take this for damage, wanting to get as much value out of this Battlecaster and crowd favorite as possible. Just going to be a pass from Surrender. Staring down 5 units and an Elise evolution. Does mean this Chump Wump will not get a favorable block. Certainly going to be dragged away by a 1/1. There's the troop. We've seen this swing games before. Coming on 5 exactly when you need it. Surrender's tournament life currently in danger. Will the troop be enough? Xixo could play this crowd favorite. Is going to do it, and that's going to be a massive 7/7. Going to go up to an 8/8 once this Arena Battlecaster swings. Cannot be traded back on either, as this Chump Wump will certainly get pulled by the Spiderling. Harsh Winds a consideration now. Get Excited also a consideration, as it would take the Challenger off the Elise. Gonna put his hand in the fate of the Elnuks, and only one Bull gonna come out. Not a high roll by any means, however, there were only 2 left in the deck after one was discarded to the Get Excited. Still a lot of damage going to be pushed out now. It looks like the Spiders will go all the way to the right, pulling away these blockers. Going to push through a lot of damage. Let me do the math here. 8, 13, actually lethal damage. Exact lethal damage, which means the Brittle Steel will have to come out onto the Elise here. Still going to be 10 coming out from Xixo as he throws away some of his board to push this through. At least this House Spider going to trade onto this troop of Elnuks. The rest just going to soften up the board. Xixo left with 2 Crawling Sensation. Not going to play either of them. Oh, going to play 1. The delay on the hand had me a little confused there. 3 targets for the Ezreal, if I saw that correctly. Does mean Surrender is fighting a very uphill battle here. Another Chump Wump, not going to get it done as the Mushrooms relatively useless by themselves in this matchup. Will float 2 spell mana into the next turn though, unless he wants to go for a Get Excited or Mystic Shot, but a crowd favorite. The pickup from Xixo, likely to be the final nail in the coffin here, does have the Harsh Winds to knock those down, but with this Arena Battlecaster getting to live into this next attack turn, could be a problem. Might have to be Mystic Shot and Chump Wump this turn. Of course, will leave Surrender with a very dead hand. 6 cards, but only 2 real ones between the Get Excited and the Harsh Winds, if that is the case. And then 4 Mushrooms to round it out. Meanwhile, Xixo has to be liking his chances in this game. No Ezreal yet on the side of Surrender does mean he is a long way from winning the game. Is going to start off with a Mystic Shot onto the Arena Battlecaster. This is a pretty good start as it will actually knock 1 health and attack off of this upcoming crowd favorite. Going to be a 6-6 instead of a 7-7 again. The Chump Wump could be the play now. Might float the spell mana, as it would give him access to Harsh Winds and Get Excited, which he will almost certainly need to survive this next turn. Surrender thinking carefully about his next play here. Is going to go for the Chump Wump, it seems, not floating the spell mana into the next turn, taking the Get Excited Harsh Winds play off the table. Xixo now has to consider this Crawling Sensation to get another challenger out. Of course, will not push through enough damage in the face of this Harsh Winds without another spell off the top, something like a Mark of the Isle, as it will only be 7 mana from Surrender. Currently 3 blockers lining up on 3 spiders. 1 Harsh Winds for the 2 crowd favorites is going to be the pass. The Avarosan Marksman on the side of Surrender could save him a bit of grief here, taking out one of these challengers. An Arachnid Horror, the pickup from Xixo. Gonna play that one out, liking the way that that lines up a little bit better, as it does let him challenge and kill the Bull Elnuk, as well as a Spiderling into the Chump Wump. Does only leave 1 unfavorable trade. However, that is still a lot of damage. The Avarosan Marksman cannot come down here with the Harsh Winds. Surrender, even looking at one of these Puff Caps, thinking this is the most mana efficient way, as I will only have 1 mana left over. Marksman not going to be able to come down here, as Surrender got down the Chump Wump instead. Actually, considering it, will take the Harsh Winds off the table if this is the case. And it will be Get Excited looking juicy. However, I'm not seeing the health totals lining up for Surrender's minions in the face of these overwhelms. Looks like a Surrender consideration from Surrender, counting up the damage, realizing that he's not going to be able to pull this one out. Xixo could take the 2-0 lead here in the finals rather quickly. A turn 7 kill is in the works here, lining up these blockers onto these spiders, and it is going to be a Surrender out of Surrender, leading Xixo in this series 2-0, 1 game off of being the Grand Champion. Potential match point here for Xixo in the finals, as he does lead 2-0 over Surrender. Xixo hopping onto his last deck, the Elnuk Ezreal, and Surrender swapping back to Noxus Spiders, as this matchup did just work out for Xixo to give him the 2-0 lead. Both of these players actually bringing the same lineups into the finals here, as I am now realizing both running Noxus Spiders, Elnuk Ezreal, and Lucian Garen with Ionia. A couple of differences in the deck lists, I presume, but no way to know for sure as I do not have access to them. Now, Surrender going to get started with the Legion Rearguard, just as Xixo did in the last game. However, Xixo Keely drawing this Ezreal in this matchup is going to give him a pretty good advantage, as the Mystic Shot's going to come down. No elusive blockers going to come out of the Noxus Spiders. However, not going to have the attack on 3 does mean he wants to play this Avarosan Sentry to preserve his life total a little bit. It's going to be the troop of Elnuks for Xixo. Have to see if this one works out better than it did for Surrender. Of course, Surrender also having a big Arena Battlecaster turn. No crowd favorites insight for him, though. We'll have to see how this works out. Get Excited on the side of Xixo. Once again, not something you generally want to use for your early removal, as the discard can be backbreaking, but with a couple copies of Ezreal and a Harsh Winds that's rather far from coming down. Could see this happen. Is going to be a large attack here out of Surrender. The Brittle Steel certainly going to come down here to preserve the life total. Could help survive the Avaros and Sentry instead. Actually, only 6 damage coming through. Thought the Battlecaster was played. Was in fact another House Spider. Was wondering where all of these units came from. Was waiting for the attack buff as well, but it's not coming. Only 6 damage going to come through. Will be 11 to 20 if this all goes out. Instead, a trade going to be coming through here potentially. If the Mark of the Isle comes out onto the Spiderling is going to be the case. Xixo not going to love seeing that one, however, does still have the mana next turn for this Ezreal into the fleeting Mystic Shot. Of course, Brittle Steel going to be out of range now as the Spider is a 4/4. Going to be a lot of damage down onto Xixo. And the third Ezreal picked up, actually. This is going to curve nicely into this Troop of Elnuk turn. However, the decisive maneuver Hecarim on the side of Surrender, as we saw clutch out the series before this one. It's going to be the attack from the Ezreal. This fleeting Mystic Shot likely to come down onto a House Spider, not wanting to float the spell mana. Turn 5, 1-2 shy for the Hecarim. Could take a little bit too long to set up here for Surrender. Has the pieces, does he have the time? As this Troop of Elnuks is about to roll the dice here in the finals. With 3 Ezreal already in hand for Xixo, as one of them is dead, one on board, one still in the hand. Does mean that he has access to his win condition as soon as it's online. Gonna be a big attack here from Surrender. 7 damage coming through. Would put Xixo very low. He's going to have to block out this Spider. The Brothers Bond almost certain to come through here. However, that one would get traded back by the Brittle Steel. Would take the Troop of Elnuks off the table for the turn. Could push through some big damage instead. However, the Brothers Bond very likely to come out here one way or another, whether it's used to push damage or get the Ezreal off the board. Will certainly be met by a Brittle Steel or Mystic Shot. Brittle Steel would leave room for the Bull Elnuk to come down. Troop all but off the table this turn. Once Surrender decides how he wants to manage this, it will be the decisive maneuver, actually. Going to get one of those out of hand, says 2 is too many. You can keep the Ezreal, I want the damage, and I want this Spider to survive. Xixo going to have to consider some removal, as Brittle Steel will not save all of the damage, as the decisive maneuver will not resolve this attack buff until after the Brittle Steels come down. Once he confirms this, it'll be too late to do anything about it. So a potential 9 damage coming through from Surrender this turn, thanks to one of these decisive maneuvers. Does still have the second one on backup for the Hecarim. Xixo gonna have to find a way to turn this Ezreal on relatively soon. Looks like Get Excited going to be the play. Does value holding on to this last Ezreal. Going to discard the Bull Elnuk. Going to play the Mystic Shot as well, perhaps. Going to take it all back instead. Running out of time here. Does have to play these quickly. It will just be the Mystic Shot onto the Arena Battlecaster. Will be 5 damage pushed through by the House Spider. Xixo falling down to 7 here in game number 3. Surrender sitting at a pretty 19. However, Ezreal still on the side of the board as Xixo. 3 mana going to be banked and a Troop of Elnuks in hand. This could be disaster for Surrender. 5 damage coming through, 4 blocked out by the Ezreal as there is no Overwhelm on this Spiderling. This could be the pivotal turn. What are we going to see out of the Troop of Elnuks? A single Bull Elnuk. Not bad. Not bad. Was getting ready for a bit of a high roll hype moment. Could see all the Elnuks coming out of the deck of Xixo. Would end the game on the spot. Not going to be the case here. Just a relatively decent roll into the Bull Elnuk. 5 mana for 7-8 worth of stats. Going to be met by the turn 6 Terror Hecarim. Only 7 life left for Xixo. However, a flurry of freeze effects in his hand. If If these attacks go through, will put Surrender down to 8. Brittle Steel a consideration if he softens up this Hecarim. And no clean blocks for the House Spider or Spiderling. Ezreal going to get this fleeting Mystic Shot and take one of them off the board, certainly. Surrender falling rather low here in the face of this Ezreal and Elnuk Rampage. However, it does have his Hecarim and the Decisive Maneuver. Too many Frostbite effects, though. 2 Harsh Winds and a Brittle Steel. This one looking in Xixo's favor here in game number 3. Xixo could just be a couple of turns off of crowning himself Grand Champion here of the Legends of Runeterra Invitational. Surrender going to have to play this one perfectly. The Decisive Maneuver going to come out after the Frostbite effects. Could spell disaster here. Xixo going to have to line up some blocks for sure. Always important to remember to line up your blocks, especially if you're using Frostbite effects to get the damage traded back, as well as to not die to combat tricks like this Decisive Maneuver and Brothers Bond in Surrender that he could be using to find his first game win here in the finals. 2 Get Excited, 2 Brittle Steel, 2 Harsh Winds, and a Bull Elnuk in the center makes up the hand of Xixo, makes up a difficult board to punch through, makes up a difficult path to victory for Surrender. It's going to be a couple of blocks lined up and rearranged. Don't want to get too into it until Xixo confirms his turn. If he aligns this up, it will only be 3 damage coming through. The Decisive Maneuver onto the Bull Elnuk will kill Xixo if he doesn't play anything here. Of course, plenty of mana in the bank, 9 in total, enough for a Harsh Winds and a Get Excited or 2 Brittle Steel. Lot of options to come down here. Of course, Brittle Steel, or rather Harsh Winds, will still push through 4 damage if it comes through onto the 2 units that are getting through their damage. Will also trade onto the Ezreal with this House Spider, so Xixo going to have to take all of this into consideration, that this buff will not come out until after the Harsh Winds resolves. If he screws up the math here, could spell disaster for him here in game number 3. Instead, going to be the Harsh Winds onto the 2 attackers. Will there be a Brittle Steel onto this Spiderling to save the Ezreal? Putting Xixo down to 3 here. A misclicked Get Excited at his own face would end the game then. Almost certainly not going to happen here, though. Surrender, though, does have this Brothers Bond. Is going to go for it to try and push out the lethal. However, a Brittle Steel now onto this Spectral Rider will put Xixo down to 1 if my math is correct. Instead, going to be the Get Excited, taking it off the board entirely. Only 4 damage rather going to get pushed through by this Hecarim. No, actually I take back, it was the Brittle Steel onto the Spectral Rider. Is still going to push through 4, going to put Xixo at 1. However, as we have seen here in the top 8, 1 is enough life to win the game, and the other Brittle Steel going to come down on the Spider, protecting the Ezreal. Should be very close to a level up here, with enough burst in hand potentially to end the game. Trade Hecarim, the sole remaining unit for Surrender. Ezreal and Bull Elnuk, the titular cards of this Elnuk Ezreal deck, left for Xixo. Arachnid Horror going to come down just for some extra blocking power potentially. It's Harsh Winds still on the side. Brothers Bond permanently buffing up the Hecarim. Another Arachnid Horror and a progress day for Xixo. A huge pickup here. Going to be the refuel that he needs after this Ezreal level up. And that should be all she wrote here for Xixo. Here in the Grand Finals, just a couple turns off of potentially crowning himself champion. Only 1 life remaining, though, does have to be careful. Will be the second Arachnid Horror played for Surrender. The Elise likely to come down here. Mystic Shot onto the Hecarim will certainly be the Ezreal level up. This one is coming down to the wire. These last few moments of the tournament, Elise going to come down now. We are going to go into Surrender's attack turn with 2 units on the side of Surrender. But no, actually at 10 life, That's going to be the double get excited out of Xixo, and that's going to be the game. These Ezreals surrender, all smiles still, hell of a competitor. 3-0 for Xixo here, pulling his cat onto the stream to congratulate him. Going to be the Jinx emote out of Surrender, and that is going to be Xixo. Crowned the champion here of the Korean Invitational with a 3-0 victory in the Grand Finals over Surrender.
Invitational 첫 번째 대회 우승 식소 선수가 차지.
레전드 Runeterra.